In this video, we are going to start the process of showing how transactions are entered into the new electronic filing system web application, abbreviated EFS. The new web-based application does not utilize schedules as previous iterations of EFS have used. However, the categories in which different data will be entered closely mirror the schedules that were used in the past. In this video, we will be working in the File a Disclosure Report page from the main navigation at the top of the screen after creating our report. For instructions on how to create the report, please view the video entitled Filer Dashboard in EFS. Please note that the Transaction Type drop-down menu located towards the top of the page will only populate with items that are applicable for your committee type. For example, we will be entering data during this video for a Type 1 Single Candidate Authorized Committee named Friends of Mr. Smith. Single Candidate Authorized Committees are prohibited from having housekeeping funds. Therefore, the choices of entering non-campaign housekeeping receipts and housekeeping expenditures will not appear for this committee when selecting from the drop-down menu. On the flip side, single candidate authorized committees are permitted to transfer funds in and out, so those two options do appear as selections in the drop-down menu. The first category for data entry in the transaction type drop-down menu is for monetary contributions received from individuals and partnerships. We will cover this category in this video. Once the transaction type is chosen and the user selects Apply, you will see new drop-down menu options for sorting and columns to view. The choices default to Created Date and Descending for sorting. As for column view, 6 are required, but others can be selected based on personal preference. Once you choose which you prefer to see, select Set Preferences. Select the Add New Transaction button to begin entering a transaction. A new dialog box appears. While we are entering in a contribution from an individual, John Wilson, let's point out a few things to note in the dialog box. The first question is transaction itemized? Use the drop-down menu to select your response. For this first entry, we are showing an itemized transaction. Afterwards, we will demonstrate how an un-itemized transaction is entered. Next, enter the date the contribution is received or select it from the calendar provided. Then, you will select the contributor type from the drop-down menu. For this first example, we are simply using an individual, but this is also where you would disclose funds from other people, such as the candidate, candidate's spouse, and candidate's family, as well as entities such as partnerships and sole proprietorships. Next, enter the name and address of the contributor in the fields provided. If this is a contributor you have entered into the EFS web application before, the fields will populate upon selection from the drop-down menu. Next, select the method of payment from the drop-down menu and input a check number if applicable. You will then disclose the amount of the contribution. Please note that the explanation field can be used to provide any other information. The asterisk indicates which fields are required for saving the transaction. Please be aware that they are not a complete picture of compliance requirements. Select the Save button, and the statement Transaction Saved Successfully appears in a new dialog box. Select OK to close. Transactions will populate in the table on the page as they are entered. Now we will demonstrate what entering an un-itemized contribution looks like. While we are entering in an un-itemized contribution from an individual, let's point out the changes in the dialog box. The required fields will change once Unitemized is selected. Only the date, amount, and explanation fields remain. Enter data in those fields and select Save. As you consider reporting unitemized contributions, please keep in mind the rules about unitemizing contributions. A contribution may be reported as unitemized if the contribution from the unique donor on its own or in conjunction with earlier contributions from the same donor during that election cycle or calendar year, depending on committee type, does not exceed $99. A treasurer is still required to know the name, address, and method of every single dollar of every single contribution that comes into a committee in its internal accounting records, but unitemization is allowed for public disclosure purposes. Unitemization is an option, not a requirement. Additionally, unitemized lump sums are permitted. For example, if you had 10 new donors, each give your committee $65 at a fundraising event, you could disclose a $650 lump sum unitemized contribution for that date. We will now enter in a contribution from a partnership named XYZ LLP. Election law requires that partnership contributions in excess of $2,500 in a single contribution or in the aggregate throughout the election cycle or calendar year, depending on committee type, must be attributed to the individual partners. We will show how this looks in the new application. When partnership is selected from the drop-down menu, the required fields will change based on this selection. While the fields for first, middle, and last name will no longer be listed, the remainder of the fields are to be completed. Once fields are complete, select Save. A new dialog box regarding the requirement to attribute partnership contributions over $2,500 will appear. Next, close the transaction entry dialog box by selecting OK. The link to add the required partnership details appears on the page in the table in the Action column. Select the partnership link from the table and then select Add Partner and complete all details. Residential address is required. Select Save and close the new dialog box by selecting OK. Keep in mind that the attribution among the partners does not have to be in direct proportion with the ownership interest. Once the dialog box is closed, the outstanding partner amount is updated in the table. In our example, we are attributing the contribution to 2 partners. Repeat these processes for all contributions your committee has received from individuals and partnerships. As always, staff at the New York State Board of Elections is always happy and ready to assist you. Our Campaign Finance Call Center may be reached at 518-474-8200. For technical assistance, our IT Help Desk may be reached at 518-473-4803.